Okay, well, next one up, we have Creon. Please come up on stage. Creon has not only been a long-term friend at this point, but also has been involved with Foresight before I was. And I think I mentioned in a talk a long, long time ago that you often feel like a mind clone, or like if I could clone myself mind-wise, I would like to see what it's like to inhabit your mind. I think you're such a polymath in a variety of different areas, and we're excited to hear what you have to say. The question is, the talk is entitled, if space is the answer, then what is the question? And you'll be speaking free from the hip, so come on up here.
Thanks, Allison. So glad to be here. This is I talk about a set of related ideas that I have finally sort of distilled to the point where I'm ready to speak it. Usually my talks are full of beautiful pictures and no text at all, but here we have no pictures and no text because I've decided to do this without slides because it's about ideas. And eventually I'll make slides, but not this first time. So if space is the answer, what is the question? The reason I phrase it that way is because in the communities I hung out with a lot professionally and socially, there's a lot of space enthusiasts. And they kind of feel like, you know, we've got to go to space, we've got to go to space. We ask, one might ask why. And they will present things such as terraforming Mars, colonizing Mars, building space colonies, mining the asteroids. But these are all things that have been spoken about for decades, and they're not happening. I'm not saying they will never happen, but there's arguably no path to make them happen from where we currently are. And I'm going to back up for a second and say why I say that. We do have reasons to go to space. And they are exactly the same reasons that we started going to space at the dawn of the space age 60 or so years ago. I class it as basically, there are 5 reasons that we engage in space activities. The first is communication satellites. The second is Earth observation satellites, reconnaissance satellites, surveillance satellites, you know, scientific Earth observation, whatever you want to say. You have to do that from space. You can't do that kind of thing. You certainly can't observe any country that doesn't want you flying in their airspace from anywhere other than space. You can't get a whole planet from anywhere other than space. So there's communication satellites, there's Earth observation satellites. The third category would be military activities in space, missile launch warning, specialized comms and signal intelligence, but I'm just going to classify those into military reasons. And some of those things can only be done from space, or they wouldn't do them because they're so expensive to do from space. They could do them from the Earth. The fourth reason, the fourth thing that is done is science missions, like, you know, the Hubble telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, the exoplanet observation surveys, Mars rovers, you know, Jupiter, Saturn, outer planet, all these things. No other way to do those science missions other than flying in space. And then the fifth and final reason, we sent humans to space. And like there's almost no scientific, economical, military justification for sending humans to space. Almost everything that the humans are doing in space has zero or like ridiculously small scientific, military, or economic return for the dollars that are spent. So why do we send humans into space? I claim it is for national and cultural soft power reasons, and also for spiritual reasons. Now, no one from NASA will ever tell you it's for spiritual reasons, because they can't, but it is. It's the hero's journey. It's, you know, we collectively as a society kind of select a few people to go off literally into the other worlds and come back with a gift of great price. It's not moon rocks. It is an accomplishment. It is a transcendence. And it's just like the shaman in other cultures who go on this journey that Joseph Campbell talked about in the monomyth, the hero's journey. Okay, so those 5 things, they're done in space because they have to be. There's no way to do them on Earth. And that's arguably, okay, and that's how it's been for 60 years. We only do things in space that have to be done in space and can't be done on Earth. Now, recently, there's been one exception to that, brought about by the decreased launch costs from Falcon 9 and then soon Starship. We now have kind of domestic mass market internet that is available from space. Starlink and its soon-to-be competitors. And that, I think, might be, I'm not sure, might be the first time that there's something that is being done in space, not because it is impossible to do on Earth, but because it has finally become competitive enough at a low enough price point to do it from space, with perhaps some other advantages and disadvantages in the trade space as well. And this is what is to be expected to happen as launch costs decrease, and to some extent as other technologies get better. But launch cost is the critical one. Kilograms, dollars per kilogram to low Earth orbit, or dollars per kilogram to Mars. As the launch costs decrease, one would expect that new applications would now become economically feasible and could move out of the dream stage and move into the stage where governments, and particularly private enterprise, will actually make the investment, because no private enterprise is actually going to build a major space colony or send people to inhabit Mars, because it's just trillions of dollars of activation costs. So unless we have some kind of hugely grown Earth economy, I don't think that will happen. But the last thing I'm going to say is, what is the question? So in my mind, the question is, what other things do we have as intermediate steps between the traditional utilization categories, the 5 that I mentioned for space that we've had for the entire space age, and the sort of far-reach Mars colonies, O'Neill colonies, starships, asteroid mining? What are some intermediate steps that economically make sense so that people will invest in them, but that don't break the bank? And that's the question, if space is the answer.
Any questions to the talk of if space the answer? What's the question? Do you want to add a question to Creon's mix? All right, wonderful. Go for it.
Just curious, Creon, if you have intuitions about what those things might be.
Yeah, I have some intuitions. I think it might be a little bit boring to talk about them right now, and I'm kind of out of time, but I'm happy to discuss. I have one or two.
Give us one or two.
Okay, I'll just mention two very quickly. I think that I'm generally not in favor of solar power satellites. I think most solar power satellite schemes are just it takes like 2 lines of math to figure out that they can't possibly pay for themselves. But there is a solar power satellite, beamed solar power to the Earth, that might economically close at reasonable cost, and that is solar power satellites that use infrared lasers to beam to the Earth to existing solar farms at night. And because that will not only keep those solar farms producing power at night, but it will, to some extent, solve the storage problem. So because they can produce at night, it won't solve it completely, but it'll help alleviate it, which is the killer problem, well, one of the many killer problems for solar energy: the intermittency, the storage. Don't get me started. But the other, and then there's another one or two, but I'll just leave it at that one.
All right, well, you're leaving us on a cliffhanger, so people will find you later, hopefully. Thank you, Creon.